All right, so good afternoon. My name is Tony Kueh. I'm from SAP. I run a product management organization in our mobile business. What I want to do today is just sort of share with you some of the insights around the things that we're doing and the vision around what we're doing for not only for the private sector enterprise world, but also the public sector and governments. A lot of times we think that people think about mobile and the first thing that they do is obviously email. But very quickly, the productivities that we are seeing today is not necessary from email. If you're like me, my email box anywhere, any week in time can have 2,000 unread messages with another 300 coming in every day. So having email as the way to drive business process or efficiency is actually a very poor medium for driving that. So we often want to look beyond what's email so that you can ensure that there's productivity and really the way that you can orchestrate an efficient way of proceeding with your business processes or the processes that are mandated either by law or perhaps by the local governments. So when we go and look at the government today, when we talk to customers, and a lot of them are also defense contractors that work with governments at a federal or state level. They often say that today they think about mobility as a way to power the people, the employees, the customers, the consumers, the citizens that are connected to the system, right? It's through the medium of a device. But these devices do present an opportunity in that I think in some of the sessions earlier today, you hear about notification, right? In alerts and notifications in which information that are deemed critical are pushed to you rather than through a website where you always have to visit the website to get that information. But more and more so, we see the opportunity to bring machines, automated machines and sensors into the environment. It's about having the necessary data to have the systems make decisions for you. So the systems are now smart enough to learn your preferences. If you just take a very simple algorithmic search, such as what Google employs, it understands the general preference that when you say, candy, it means something to me versus something to someone else. They have that technology in today. So when these algorithms are applied in a big data environment where you can basically say, I see temperature rising in these sensors, they can derive what that means. And when you're able to derive what that means, then it means something to one person versus another, right? So for example, if you see temperatures rising because it's a really hot day in Sacramento, it's pretty normal, right? But when you see temperatures rising in a biotech lab through the sensors, that means something very different because biotech labs are typically cooled at 60 degrees or lower, right? So that is an alert that a system can then automatically trigger without the intervention of a human being to derive whether this is an alarm or this is normal because it's hot outside. So we see that as those sensors come into the environment, then you can apply those sensors to things like port security. So port security, the monitoring and asset tracking through the intelligence of that sensor data and the dispatch engines that are in the system, so that you take the slowness of having human intervention in that cycle, and you get faster response and faster decision making. Now, we also see this phenomenon that the adoption of mobility is really at a pace that's beyond what we have ever seen before in technology. If you think about how long it took the PC to become mainstream in any organization, it probably spanned a good 10, 15 years. If you think about the first PCs in the early 80s to the mid 90s was when it was almost a mandate that everybody had those skills and had that in their work environment. Mobility has, in a very short 5 years, gone from that's only for executives for email, or that's only for the people driving the asset management or delivery trucks, to now we've got a portable computer in our pockets at all times. And so, if we just take a couple of snapshots, right? The White House wants everybody to be in this app world in 12 months. The Android adoption across the board, we're seeing just phenomenal growth in Android, both domestically and abroad. And Android didn't even exist really in the mainstream availability when you go to a store to buy until basically early 2010. So within a 3-year time frame, they took over not only the incumbent leader in smartphones, which is BlackBerry. They've overtaken the new darling of smartphones, was the Apple. I mean, this is just a completely amazing growth. I mean, literally, what it literally means is that if GM started a brand new car company today, that in 3 to 5 years, they become the #1 car company in the world. I mean, from a comparison perspective, that's basically what this means. Android is now activating more smartphones today than BlackBerry activated per year 10 years ago. In one day, each day, Android activates more devices than what BlackBerry sold 10 years ago per year. So that's a phenomenal growth. And finally, we think that the utilization of mobility is now cutting across. It used to be that mobile meant in the enterprise or in government meant a specific functional role, right? So if you're UPS, mobility meant you are either the people that are working in shipping and logistics or delivery, right? Now mobility is across the board. It's a horizontal piece. It's an infrastructure piece. It's necessary for the basic functions of the organization, whether you're in a specific line of business functional role or if you're in the executive ranks. And even in some of the companies that we work with, they have seasonal employees, right? The post office will hire seasonal employees during holidays, same with retail. Those employees now are expected to have some kind of mobile devices that they can put applications on those devices so that they can do their jobs better. So the value of what we see in mobility, if we want to simplify it, comes down to these 3 things. Number one, we want to make sure that you have a way to communicate and exchange information. The way that we disseminate information today is still very chaotic, right? If you think about, if you want to put a new, in the lunch session, they were talking about building a new app that not only pushed out important legislation to the citizens, but really a dashboard to help them understand what that meant. I mean, most of the people in the state of California, every year you hear about Proposition 1 through N, right? I can tell you that most of the people do not know every single one and what it means and how they really need to go. They read enough to sort of make a decision, but quite frankly, I don't know if they really know everything they have, all the details behind each of those propositions to make an intelligent decision as if you were sitting down with somebody explaining it to them. Mobile can change that. The things that we're doing today are inserting things like multimedia content that you can have somebody do a 3-minute clip and say, this is what it means, and then have the counterpoint, right? And allow the person that's consuming this information make a intelligent decision based on their own preferences. The second thing is that we think the ability for you to, for the governments to take mobile as a way to access the opinions, the information, and also the feedback to collect for decisions that the government, whether it's at a local, state, or federal level, to make those decisions more intelligently. The ability for you to, for example, survey the crowd, and this notion of crowdsourcing, right? Today, you have a bunch of email addresses. You don't really know who's behind that email address, right? I used to live in the state of Washington. I still get the state representatives emailing me, telling me about the initiatives. Now, I do care. I have friends and family there. But quite honestly, I'm not in a position to even make the decision, right? So that email to me, delete, right? Because I can't take action on it. With mobile, the action is very simple. You can pop up a notification and say, hey, there's a brand new legislation around, let's say, fuel taxes. Do you care about that? I drive quite a bit, right? So I click on it, I get a page, and say, what do you think about this? Right? Yes, no, find out more information, send me more information. The decisions can be very quick, and that decision then gets put into whatever backend or centralized system so that you can collect that information, whether it's a small decision or a major decision. You can do these surveys, and people don't feel that it's, if you do it intelligently, people won't feel that intrusive because it doesn't take much time. Right? Now, if you think about how long it takes for you to send out an email, for somebody to click that link and then pop up a browser and then have it load and then read through it, they have to consciously do that. Whereas in mobile, you give them sort of the Twitter phenomenon, right? You say, hey, here's the headline. Click if you care. Okay, now when you click, you know when they clicked. You know where they clicked it from a mobile device, right? And that's important context information. And finally, as I said, that response you can analyze. Yes?
You're talking about surveys. You get a ton of surveys every day on the phone. So are you saying that you're going to be saturated with surveys?
No. How do you get surveys today? Through your email, or how do you get it on your phone?
Mostly by text message.
Oh, really? Yeah, so I'm more than happy to have a sidebar with you on that. The survey through text messaging has been proven that it doesn't work. It doesn't work that well, unless you've already opted in for it. So actually this is a, yeah, but like for example, there's on my phone, there's, I forgot what it was, but on my, I think it's in the do not call list, the national do not call list. It's also for solicitation. So I've enrolled. Right, but if you register that in the national federal do not call list, they are not supposed to send you solicitation SMS messages either. Yeah. Yeah, it's an imperfect system, but in the survey, just to help you understand what that experience looks like, the survey, we expect that those notifications, it's not just the surveys, right? It's just generally notifications when somebody pushes something to you that you may or may not want. The way that we envision this is to have everything hidden behind an app. The app itself is automatically the first filter in understanding your preferences. The other thing that we're doing a lot with, we do power a lot of the technology behind private sector couponing and promotions. Like we do this, for example, with Procter & Gamble for diapers, is that we can track how often that the person, the customer actually responds. Because there's actually a negative effect, perhaps is what you're experiencing, is that if you keep getting spammed by this brand, right, when you don't want it, even though you may have started liking the brand or having a neutral stance on the brand, if you get bothered too much, your impression of that brand actually diminishes, right? It's just similarly to, I get calls once in a while from the local police department wanting to donate, right? Now, if they call once a year, I'm perfectly fine with that. Those are hardworking people. They contribute to the community, right? I donate. But imagine if they called you every day, right? Your propensity to actually give them money now diminishes because they're actually intruding on your life. So those intelligence, we believe, needs to be hidden behind the notion of an app. It's what we generically call engagement. So this is the things that companies like Facebook is really trying to figure out, like what is the right level of engagement to the people. And I think that you have to use more sophisticated technologies like having the apps, having the data come back from the apps and analyze the interaction.
See that on websites all the time. They want a customer survey while you're doing the website.
Yeah.
If you're looking on a website for doing research, you don't necessarily have time to
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely agree. So some of the better sites now will actually try to understand your preference, like how often you would like to be prompted, and also it'll determine it based on your demographic, your preferences, and the content that you're viewing, right? I mean, the technology is sophisticated now, where we can tell if you're doing research or if you're just leisurely browsing the news and whatnot. So they haven't employed it all, but they are going to. But I can tell you that from the data that we see, getting a text message is a lot more intrusive than having a survey pop up on a website, right? Because you actually went to that site and that thing popped up, whereas right now I'm doing nothing. The phone's in my pocket, and if you're beeping me, it better be something that I care about rather than, or something that I subscribe to. Now, if the text message came in and say, hey, you can buy a brand new Audi for $10,000 and it's a real deal, then of course you want that text message all the time. So going on. So the next thing that we also think about is, so when you're looking to enable these solutions, right? Who are the people that at a technology level that you really need to focus on? So the technology at the end of the day, and we talked a little bit about this already, is the users. What is that user experience? So the things that you talked about notification, we have seen a lot of implementations of mobile without the notion of how do I do notifications. Because if you think about the sort of the structure of a mobile app, right? It's a version, a mobile context version of what you would have probably thought about, initially when you did the first web app. Now I would say that most websites now are so cluttered because they just keep adding things onto it without really redesigning the site. In mobile, you sort of get this opportunity to redesign your interface, redesign your user experience. But often what we forget is, what about notifications, right? Because for me, if the app is on my device and I don't do anything with it, it sits there, it's not intrusive. But the devices have now a mechanism for me to notify you. And if you don't use that wisely, you can get people, a lot of times I get, I think there was like, a few years ago, there was a app that's for Twitter, right? And somehow I must have pressed one of the buttons that says, get notified every time somebody sends you something on Twitter, or some keywords that you want triggers on. And I was getting notified all the time, right? This is equivalent to your getting notified every day. And what did I do? I didn't go and try to figure out how to turn it off. I just took the app off. Right? And so not having the intelligence in that platform to enable the developers to not do the bad design is very important. Everything that we do today in my world, when we talk to customers that ranging from the state, local government to the big Fortune 500s, you can tell when somebody is going to be successful by the questions that they ask initially. The question they ask has to be focused around the end user, because, and this is a difference between email and application. Email is very structured, right? We know what email is supposed to be like. You get an email, you get an icon. You open an email, you can reply, forward, delete, right? It's already a very structured interface. With applications, the world is wide open. And you can do it in a way that's very annoying to the user, or you can do it that's very beautiful and engaging for the end user. And it starts with how you think about how you want to engage the user, and whether you have that mindset of putting yourself in the shoes of the end user, that do you want this experience every day? And then secondly is to give the developers the tools to deliver that user experience, right? If you constrain the developer to say, well, yes, that would be cool if you could do that, but no, we can't let you do that, then you're really constraining the experience. The key thing is that there's some things that are just becoming table stakes, right? We want to make sure that the transitions are very fast. We want to make sure that the data is secure. you want to make sure that the icons are big enough so that everybody can see it, and you don't need a magnifying glass with these high-res screens that to see the icons and the text. But there's other additional things such as the notification engine. So you can make the developer say, well, here's the API calls to send out all these notifications. But if that doesn't get filtered, right, if there's no user preference to turn it off, then you basically open up your application to the developer making the wrong decision, because someone will decide, hey, you know what, I like getting 10 messages per hour because this is my app, I want people to see it. Well, that's the wrong decision, because sometimes you want to make sure that the user's in control, right? So you want to prevent the developers from building a bad design, but at the same time enabling so that they can use some of the new core technologies within the realm of what you allow and disallow. And all of this gets managed by the IT administrator. So you want to have the controls, the policies in there in the platform to make sure that you can centrally guide what is possible or not. I mean, the technology today is phenomenal. They can go end to end. You can do a lot of things in there, but there's the essence of what your experience is, again, for the user, needs to be determined in a set of very basic constructs. They're user design, the UI framework. We see that people who are now, they may have dabbled in mobile and mobile apps between 09, 2010, maybe even 2011. Now in 2012 is coming through and saying, you know what, I pushed out all these apps. They don't look the same. As a matter of fact, we have this problem at SAP. We sort of got onto this mobile bandwagon, and we say, let's go. Let's build all these apps very quickly. We spun up all the teams, and then you have teams that you can tell which floor of the building they sat on by the app they produced, because they look completely different. Yes, sir?
When you're designing a mobile app, I have it here, it seems like everybody's heading in this direction. When you're designing a mobile app, aren't you really involved in the principles of customization?
Absolutely. If you're designing yes, actually, I was going to say if you're designing an app for the end user, a customer or a citizen to connect into the system, but it's actually also for employees.
Yeah, it's always for the customer.
Right. The customer could be an employee, exactly. That's why I said you're absolutely right. So the notion of how you want to interact with your customer, whether it be a business partner, a colleague, or an end customer.
So with that in mind, basically the look and feel of the app is going to be under the KISS principle.
Absolutely, absolutely. If I had an app that says give me a raise app and it just had one button, that would be perfect. Every time I press, the number goes up. That would be wonderful. You're absolutely right. And so what we see is that the challenge often is if you take away these words on the top, really this is about design, this is about building or development, and this is about deployment and management, right? So we often encourage people to spend more time on the left because it actually makes the stuff on the right go faster. Right? The worst thing that you can do is you come up with one design and you wait until the last minute to trial it. You get a bunch of feedback and then you go and redesign, and then you're respinning in the middle again, right? It's much cheaper to design on the left side. Yes. As much as possible, you hide the complexity of the technology behind the scenes. That's absolutely right. Okay. So another thing. So these are often the things that the administrator wants to care about that never hits the end user, right? So these are the things that we often find that if you take the other extreme, which is if you go completely with a design thinking focus and not worry about the core of the infrastructure of the application, and then when you're trying to deploy into often a environment with sensitive policies or sensitive data where you need the security, these are typically the things that you don't think about, right? I'll pick on connectivity a little bit, right? If you're building an application, for example, for electrical repair, right? If you think about what happens when you need emergency electrical repair, is that there's no electricity. Well, if there's no electricity, especially for an extended period of time, chances are the nearby cell tower also doesn't have electricity, which means you don't have connectivity on the device. So it would be inappropriate to build a electrical repair app and not consider the fact that sometimes, or most of the time, that application is probably going to be disconnected, right? So what you want to be able to do is that before you walk into that range of that cell site, to have all the information already on the device, walk into that range, do the repair. Once it's back up and working, then say it's completed. Now, on the forefront, the time between entering that range where there's no coverage to getting the repair, you'll be disconnected. And then once the repair is done, then you will be reconnected and the information can be submitted back into the central system. Right? Picking another example here is provisioning. Often you think about building an application and you say, well, I want this to be super secure and I want to make sure I want to use the best encryption, and I want to use certificate, I want to identify digital certificates to identify the user, the device, and then you build this application. And then you forget to think about, well, how do I get the certificate on the device? And you induce this very expensive process. We worked with this oil company in Texas that deployed 5,000 iPad devices with our business analytics app. So they use Business Objects, which is a product that SAP sells, on a bunch of things, everything from performance of the oil rigs to delivery performance to sales performance. And so they deployed these 5,000 applications to managers and senior executives. And then they say, go to this link, download this app, and then type in this URL. So they send out very detailed instructions. Well, here's the problem. That URL is about 20 characters. Okay, one wrong character, it doesn't work, right? Because you're hitting the wrong server. So 5,000, they had something about, I think on day one, they didn't do all 5,000, but on day one, they rolled out 1,000 and had a 10% hit rate on call center. So for this one app, to 1,000 users, they generated 100 extra service tickets that day for the organization. And each of them cost money. And so the application developer may not think about something very simple as, 20 character URL is actually kind of expensive to implement, because for them it's a URL. Of course it's 20 characters, there's a string you type in. But you multiply that little thing, or the chance of error for that, multiply by a large group, right? It becomes a big problem. So think about the organizations that use service and potentially even in the consumer or the customer or citizen, wherever that C is. You multiply everything by that number of people, right? An extra 5 seconds for one person with 1 million people, right, is an extra 50,000 seconds. So these things are often the things that you want to ideally take out of the hands of the developer, right? Because these are common problems that is horizontal across all applications, and you just want to make sure that it gets minimized out of the system, out of the way of the developer, so that the developer is very much focused on what the user needs for this specific application, rather than how do they get the application out and deployed and running. Okay, so I'm just going to run through this. really do the animation here. All right, so why do we think that, why not just do it one at a time? You know, this is the argument between point solutions versus platform. Email is a point solution. So email, well, for many years it's been overloaded to do a bunch of other things, right? I'll tell you why email doesn't work for us today in mobile. So if you are in an environment where you actually have a system to do approvals, like timesheet approval, right? You're a manager, someone submits a timesheet or leave request, you get an email, you get a link. And that link sends you to an intranet website that says, can you please approve John, he's going to take a week off during spring break. You can't click that link on a mobile device. Your device is outside the firewall. So you either then force the device to go VPN into the firewall all the time so that you can click on that link, or you have to find another solution, right? So the reason why we think that mobile requires a slightly different layer is because of all these intricacies of linking up the mobile world where the device lives outside the firewall most of its life. Now, if it's inside a building in a Wi-Fi, then fine, it's on the corporate network. But usually it sits outside. And even when you're indoors, it's probably still connected to the carrier network. So things like being able to tunnel data in and out, being able to transform the URL from an externally accessible URL to mapping to an internal URL, being able to connect the data between the different apps. So, you know, we often get people that say, well, for this web screen, I want this. Can you build an app for this screen? And then can you build another app for this screen? And you build a third app for this third screen. Well, on the desktop world, that's perfectly fine, right? Because you have 3 browsers. And you got 3 tabs on the browser, or you got 3 different browsers opened up. But on a mobile app, it's very difficult and different experience, right? It's difficult because you switching between an app, you often find yourself, when you actually do the exact same thing you do on the desktop, you find that the user experience is clumsy, not just because everything is small and it's hard to tap, but the fact that the user cognitive interaction is completely different because you're used to seeing 2 screens at one time. You don't think about it because you always see it that way. But on a mobile device, the device forces you to actually switch the screen. So we think that the fact that the user experience, the different types of devices that you may have. So, you know, for me right now, I've got a couple of devices plus a tablet, and I think I got one more in my bag. Now, what you'll see me do is that I now keep my laptop at my desk. I bring this to meetings, and then when I'm away from any facility or a sit-down environment, I have my phone. You don't want 3 different apps, 3 different sets of processes in those apps across that environment. You want to be able to centralize the process, centralize the data, and then have a single platform that can connect to all these systems and deliver a consistent user experience, even though it's across different form factors. So when you look at this, the essence of how we think that you should look at it is away from email aside, as you start exploring applications and functionalities that really streamline what you can do in implementation of business processes or content, or ability to deliver notifications and whatever else that you may want to do on your mobile device. The key thing to look for is, number one, that we believe that whether you may have a standard today or not, that standard around devices is probably not going to be a constant. It's probably going to shift over time. It has shifted 3 times in the last 5 years. Went from BlackBerry to iOS to Android in terms of the market share leader in terms of the device platform. The number 2 thing is you need to look for some quick wins. And this is not just short-sighted. It's the fact that often we find that in the current dynamic that you are doing something because the pressure's already been building. It's not that we're already getting ahead of the game and investing for what we might need 5 years from now. It's the fact that somebody's already asked you to say, hey, I need this like yesterday. So to be able to achieve that, you should look at for things that are as constant, instant gratification almost, right? Something that you can use immediately, but then build on top of it over time. And what we are looking for today from in what we call the co-innovation partners, really customers that are very innovative in thinking, is that they've already worked with us to help define what are the basic needs, sort of the table stakes now for the things they want to do in the future. We're looking for them to help us define that, what is that thing that they may need 2 years from now. But if you're just getting started today, then the notion is that the quickest way to get there is to just take something off the shelf. And you should definitely look for that. And sometimes the off-the-shelf stuff won't fit perfectly, right? It won't fit perfectly, but that's okay because you can always iterate on it. But if you're always starting from scratch, then you're always starting from the beginning rather than building on something that someone else has delivered. You need to have the flexibility of on-prem versus cloud. We're finding now more and more that it's actually a wave. You start doing experiments on-prem because it's easy, it's an old machine, you load some software on it, you start. But when you actually start to deploy, then you want to move to the cloud, right? But you've already done a bunch of work here. So what you don't want to do is then take all that and then having to redeploy in the cloud and effectively starting from scratch again. So that's very important. And we also see some instances where in a specific environment, so if you take a workflow application, it might be okay in the cloud. But there may be one agency or one department that says, I am super sensitive to security. There's no cloud provider today that can do what I needed to do. I want to bring that in-house. So now you have to bring that back, or maybe fork and have some instances in the cloud, some instances on-premise. So you need to make sure you have the flexibility for that. And finally, you need to make sure that the backends are agnostic. We are being challenged here today in the private sector, right? The world of HR tools is moving to the cloud in a completely different paradigm, different vendors, new vendors shifting, new systems being put in, analytics and sentiment analysis, all these big data engines are popping up. Those are brand new backend systems that you have to take account to and integrate into your applications and business processes. So that will be important, and it's important to pick a partner and vendor that is a backend agnostic and builds on standards. So with that, I'm going to actually end with a couple of success stories just to help you understand what these guys are doing. So you see a bunch of universities on here. One of the things that we found consistently is that the university organization, they often have very sophisticated IT organizations already because they have a computer science department. They often use their own IT organization as a test bed. But for these organizations, they also have a lot of assets, right? They're land grant assets, buildings, facilities. And what we do for them is that we deliver solutions of what's called asset management. So instead of sending emails, hey, if you see something not working, please send an email here, right? When we turn it into a mobile application, now today we don't deliver it to the students. Ideally, it'd be something that the students can help participate in. But the idea here is that you have somebody that walks around with a device. Instead of doing it on pen and paper, they have a digital device in which they see something wrong, they can immediately take a picture and report it. Now, there's also the issue of double reporting, right? So you see a light bulb out. Someone says, hey, the light bulb's out. And then someone else walks by, the light bulb's out. They go to the office, light bulb's out. Or worse, you get email. So now you get 10 emails that basically say the same light bulb out. But then you have to go figure out which light bulb, okay? Is it the same light bulb that was reported previously or a different light bulb? So having a digital device that allows you to capture and maybe even scan a barcode will help automate that process. And then now the next step is to take these applications and then put it in the hands of the people, like the students on these campuses, so that they can report it and diminish the amount of work that they have in terms of reporting these cases. We actually have solutions that we sell into the federal government that we can't even mention. So I'm not going to mention those. They won't let us say it. But it's all around managing assets, intensive assets, millions of dollars of things that fly in the air that we send overseas. You know what I'm talking about. And then the other thing is around the utilities. Water is a big one. Water survey, inspection, things like that. And then lastly, it's the productivity for the employees. One thing I will share with you is that one CIO actually told me once, the reason why we're investing on making the HR tools look better, both on the website, on mobile device, is that for some reason the employees just feel like the company cares about them. Right? So if you go into your benefits site and it looks like it was built in 1995 with HTML1 and, you know, these ugly icons as all text, it's like, well, of course, the company doesn't care about HR. They don't care about my benefits. Whereas it's actually an easy to navigate site, an easy to navigate experience both on mobile devices where, you know, you're doing this at home, you know, your kid is sick and they say, hey, does your insurance cover this? You go through and you have an app, look up. We actually did this for Halliburton, a oil and gas company in Texas. They did this for the family members because they want to make sure that they know, they highlight the value of their benefits to not just the employee but their families, so that they feel equity in the benefits that they're gaining, the company is paying for them. So with that, I have about 5 minutes left, I think. I'm happy to take any questions that you guys may have. If there's no questions, I'll throw some demos. Any questions? All right, while you think about that, I'll show you this one application that we built. It's for a city of Boston, where they basically build a dashboard to get a executive overview of all the key stats. So these are reports that the city runs in different departments, right? Neighborhood development, IT, police, and then they basically, from these reports, they put it into this application that gets viewed directly. And you can say, you know, here's the summary of achievements. This is kind of like a monthly report card for the city, right? An easy way to digest this information. You get some trending data that you can publish. You can get access to the key highlights, executive summary, if you will, for the goals that was accomplished. And then so that was 2012. This is what they're focusing on in 2013. Right? So this is an application that they can push out to both the administrative staff in the city, but also out to the public, so that someone who cares about this can then download this and get the stats, get the latest news. An example of something that we're doing with them to really innovate the way that they engage with both their internal employees, so that everyone can talk with the same voice, but also get this information out to the public. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.